So I have a little pre-show story all about links. So to fill everyone in, every week I procrastinate to the 10th degree, and give Spencer a list of show notes that we're going to talk about. Maybe like on a good day, 2 hours before we start recording, and on a bad day, it's like 20 minutes before. And every time, like, part of it is I come up with a stupid little poem that we want to post on Mastodon, but we need a link to say that, hey, we're going to be live under this link. If you didn't know that we record these live, you can go and listen too. Just follow us on code completion at mastodon.social. Anyways, so we post these things, but I need a link for that to happen. And Spencer, who is commander of the YouTube control, is the one who provides the link. But Spencer forgets to get a link until I come up with a snarky way of reminding him 30 minutes before. Mind you, I don't remember prior to 30 minutes before, so I'm no better. I want to put that out there. Spencer does an excellent job, but it's in order to remind himself to get a link. Spencer went and updated our show notes with all caps, Spencer, get a link. And of course, I saw that 10 minutes later, as is usual. And I'm like, oh, Spencer needs a link. So I went to Google, found a picture of a link, and sent it over to him. And this is a link from The Legend of Zelda. That link, the one in green.
Very clever.
Sometimes pink hair. And Spencer, of course, responds with, a link obtained, OT chess music. Da-na-na-na. So I think it is now time that I reveal that in one of my past jobs, under super secret NDA, this was like a work to make apps for the film industry, so I couldn't really ever talk about it. But at this point, I don't think I care anymore. It's like been 10 years. So anyways, I wrote the software. It ran on a Mac. You plugged it into a big TV, and you can watch like what got shot that day for the movie. And of course, we needed some extra commands to be able to administer it, but we wanted to keep it simple, and we didn't want it to necessarily have a bunch of like admin console stuff and all that. So the system I came up with, it was a very Apple TV, like pre-Apple tvOS, pre-tvOS Apple TV UI, where like the left was an image and the right was like a list that you can navigate through. But since we had a keyboard attached, this was a whole Mac after all. Right. I set it up so if you typed a full word, like settings, I think was one of them, that would be like a secret keyword that would open up some extra settings behind a password if necessary, to do extra stuff like administer, rename, delete stuff, etc. And because you were basically typing in the blind, I set it up so that way it would play the Zelda jingle, da-na-na-na, whenever you got it right, to indicate that like you did the thing, you got the secret. So I now spoiled the Easter egg for the people that don't use this thing anymore. But if you type certain words, and I forget what they all are, there's like some piece of the code that has them all enumerated. Up, down, down, left, right, BA was also one of them.
I was just going to say, did you put the Konami code in there? That's awesome.
Yeah, it also played the Zelda jingle. The key piece, though, is instead of a bouquet being in our key color, it was a bouquet in, like, the background was like some quartz composer magic. That was fun stuff. But yeah, if you typed in the Konami code, you got rainbow. So
nice.
It adds a splash of color. So
nice. I love it. Easter eggs are fun.
That's my link story time.
I like it.
So I guess, Spencer, at the top of our show notes, it says get a link. I don't know what that's referring to.
Wait, what? Are you serious?
No, you got one already. I'm joking. I'm just reading our show notes.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I was like, didn't you just hash this out? Okay, we're cool.
Oh, we totally did.
I'm tired.
And I have dementia, probably. Not a half joking thing. Like, over the past week. I have not remembered certain things. It's like on a moment's notice, probably like overworked as usual, but yeah.
Yeah.
I will definitely die of dementia.
I'm pretty
certain.
predictable.
Hello and welcome everyone once again to episode 126 of Code Completion. We are a group of iOS developers and educators helping to share what we love most about development, Apple technology, and completing your code. My name is Dimitri and I'll be your host once again for this episode, and I'm joined today by my fellow completionist, Spencer.
Hey there.
So once again, to start us off, we have a few Swift Evolution updates. And these are actual like proposals this time, they're not pitches. The first one is non-copyable structs and enums. And this one has come up a few times, I would say, and has gone through a number of iterations. I think it's getting to the point where it's seeing fewer and fewer changes because the entire review post, which is 98 posts long, was talking about like one problem with this whole proposal.
Nice.
And that is the new syntax for indicating that something is not copyable or maybe copyable. It's very complicated. You should definitely read the whole thing to really actually understand what on earth they're talking about. But basically, to go over the main proposal, in Swift, we want the ability to have structs and enums that are not copyable, meaning the language will actively prevent you from kind of shooting yourself in the foot and making copies of things that should really be unique and should really stay on the stack. That's the key piece there. The reason why you would want this is for performance reasons. Sometimes you have a big blob of data that you don't want to heap allocate. You just were given it and you want to make sure that that kind of lives short term and is usable by all functions that need it, but they're all going to be referencing the struct that is on the stack already rather than copy it to the heap and then do something there. So that's the main motivation here. And in order to do that, it seems like what they landed on is to have a new generic constraint on the system that basically means that the type is not explicitly copyable, meaning that it can be non-copyable, it can be copyable. It's not making any promises, and therefore anything that wants to kind of indicate that wants to use it can go ahead and make sure that it's used in one way or the other. If it sounds complicated, it kind of is. The cool part about this is it basically means a struct can have a DNet. That's at the end of the day what like it mean. It's acting as like a single use class, I guess. Like if you want to think about it that way, it's a class that lives on the stack. And the way you describe this is you make a struct, but instead of having at non-copyable or at something like some weird syntax like that, there's an even weirder syntax that they propose, and that is tilde copyable.
Yeah, it looks weird.
And tilde copyable is meant to kind of be read as maybe copyable, or I think another suggestion, if I can find it again, was like without copyable, might be like another way of saying it. That said, there were some like agreement in terms of what it could probably be in the next iteration. Without copyable is, I think, what it will probably be next time. They just couldn't think of how to describe this in like a terse, because it's not copyable. It can be copyable, but only sometimes maybe. Like, it's a very complicated idea.
Schrodinger's copyable.
Yeah, basically. And yeah, it turns out that everyone didn't really care much about the actual implementation, but mostly just this tilde, this should be an exclamation mark, but no, it can't be an exclamation mark because that's not what it means. And then, it should be maybe, but it's not maybe. It's sometimes like, I don't know. It got complicated.
Semantics are fun.
Yeah. There's only two hard things in programming is naming things, and I forget what the other one was. Off by one
Starting
errors.
a new file? Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know.
you've heard it before, but basically, this is. I also like how GitHub failed to parse the Swift code after a certain point because, like, I don't know what this tilde is, but
It's like, this definitely is new.
yeah, but yeah, that's what this whole thing is about. The non-copyable part has largely stayed the same. Like, you can check the change notes in the revision history in the review post and at the bottom of the proposal. But yeah, if you feel strongly about tilde copyable, I guess feel free to chime in. I think without copyable is probably going to win. I'm always in favor of words rather than obscure symbols. I guess the tilde is like it's kind of copyable, which also kind of works, but I don't know.
Syntactically, it looks weird. I agree. I'd just rather have we already have absolutely massive like protocol and method names and stuff. It's like, let's be a little more verbose and just make sure. I agree. Like, finding the right word is hard, but yeah, I'd prefer a word as well.
Yeah, and to be super clear, copyable is not a protocol. It behaves like one, but it is not. Yeah. Kind of like any object is not a protocol. It kind of indicates like, hey, all objects are one of these things, and therefore you can kind of treat it as a protocol, but it's not like you can conform to it, nor can you explicitly not conform to it, though some of the discussion is, hey, maybe we do want to have objects that don't conform to any object, maybe because they implement reference counting differently, for instance.
Interesting.
That might be like a legitimate thing in Swift's near future as it starts to import wackadoodle C++ things, right? So it is important to pick the right syntax here to describe this maybe conformance or this lack of a default conformance, because at the end of the day, we still want all structs to be by default copyable. Sure. And that's a good default for the language. The language developers and the authors of this proposal don't want people to suddenly start writing non-copyable structs. That is not the benefit that's coming out of this. It's sometimes you really, really need to, and you should hide the details away from anyone when you do need to, but it's better to write it in Swift than in C, is kind of the long story short.
There.
Yeah.
Cool.
Proposal number 2 is a really, really cool one. And I'm going to tell you why it's really, really cool without really going over what the proposal is. So remember in Swift UI when you have like a VStack and you start putting stuff in it and you're getting in the zone and you add like a whole bunch of nice controls, and then you get to control number 11 and it's like, I don't know what to do with this. Does not compute, right? Yes. So then you're like, okay, I'm going to group the first 10 under group, and then I'm going to have the next one. Then you start going ham at it. You get more, and then it's okay, I need 2 groups. And it starts getting ridiculous, right? Yeah. And this is because the view builder like API, the developers of Swift UI hand-coded view builders with 1 view, with 2 views, with 3 views, with 4, with 5, up to 10. And then they had said, that's enough.
That's probably...
The same thing happened in the Swift standard library, it turns out, when you have tuples? I don't know. Tupleware.
Tupleware.
Tuples, Tupleware. So if you have a tuple or a tuple, depending on who you are, I don't know which one is you, the quality is actually built in for single member tuples, 2-member tuples, 3-member tuples, up to 6 members, and then they're basically like, come on, just use a struct. You should do, yeah. That's the gentle hint. And that gentle hint is there because once again, someone copy pasted enough times equality for tuples up to 6 members, and then was like, we're kind of done with it. And yeah, that's a limitation of the language. So this is where the proposal comes in. Value and type parameter packs. These are basically generics that you can go ahead and attach to your function, attach to your, I guess only functions. I guess types too. Could certainly work, but this focuses on functions, so I'm not gonna spread lies saying it also works with types.
Okay.
And it allows you to specify a type pack, meaning like this function will take a bunch of parameters of type T, and you'll describe this type pack as being each T. So this allows you to go ahead and have in your function repeat each T instead of T dot dot dot. And that means that instead of having the same type 7 times in a row, you can have a different T for each of those 7 things that you supply, or 4 things, or 17 things. It doesn't matter how many. The constraint system will recognize it as like an array of types, and it will be able to match that up. The really cool thing is you can have multiple of these. So there's an example here called make pairs, where it takes an each first and an each second. And then the first parameter pack is here are the firsts, and the variables first is repeat each first. And then here are the seconds, the variable second, repeat each second. And that basically allows you to go ahead and build up an array of these pairs that are non-homogeneous. So the first one, the first pair might be an int and a bool, and the second pair might be a string and a double. And it can be whatever types you want, so long as you, the user of that API, are consistent with like what you're putting together.
Sure.
And that's like where it really like shines, and is super useful. So namely, for like tuple equality, we just need to define one equality, and we can have each first and each second of the tuple members, basically, and then just check them.
Okay.
For Swift UI view builders, we can go ahead and just iterate over each view, or each first of type view, or each T of type view, however you want to say it. And that will constrain all of them to be view, like implementers, conformers of view. But you don't have to like have that wackadoodle copy paste 17 times to have enough parameters to really describe that.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, this seems like a way more elegant solution. My first thought for like getting around groups would be like, maybe you could write a macro to just like do that for you.
And that's likely what they did, right? They had code gen like fill out the details so that way they don't make mistakes editing it, right?
Yeah. But so, yeah, this is cool. Actually having it a part of the language seems like a better idea than just having a macro. So that's super cool.
Yeah, definitely go check this one out, because it's once again been through various different iterations, and the latest iteration is to call these Valiant type parameter packs, and it's definitely going to come up at WWDC. I can guarantee this one, because it is deeply needed by SwiftUI. So yeah, exciting stuff.
The language moves on, ever on and forward.
So, what happens if you do use C to write code? It turns out you don't have to find out, because Google used Java and still messed up. And that's because we now have something that's very, very well named, called Acropalypse.
That's so good, dude.
And it put the emphasis on crop. And that's basically because if you have an Android device, and it turns out Windows as well, fun fact.
I was just going to say.
And you go ahead and crop an image, and you share that image, you think you're sharing a cropped version. It turns out you are sharing a cropped version that also has the original data still there. So depending on where you shared it, maybe Discord, previous to January-ish. So if you've been using Discord for 6 years, and
Yeah.
constantly sharing, all your originals are just there sitting on a CDN somewhere.
So
Um,
bad.
so bad.
So bad.
And do you want to know how this snuck in? Well, uh it's a great introduction to why you should write good APIs that are fully named with not obscure symbols. Looking at you, Pearl, that probably started this whole problem. Um, and yeah, basically, someone wrote an API where you can write to a file, and you have to pass how you want to write to the file. Do you want to read the file, write? Do you want to write and truncate? Do you want to write and append? And all of these things are going to be an R, a W, a WT,
Yep.
or a WB if you want to read in binary. That was the thing back then, when before Unicode was a thing. And yeah, they forgot the T. So therefore, they took the original screenshot, they truncated it, they wrote to that same file, but they did not clip it. And therefore, we end up with a big problem because the rest of the file still has the same image data, and it turns out to be trivial to find out. I think Simon Ahrens, who found this out and built a tool to kind of show you the damage that it can cause. Like he shows us with a credit card that I black out the thing. Meanwhile, the whole screenshot says like, oh, here's your credit limit and all that. It's not just the blacked out portion.
Yeah, it can uncrop, hence Acropalypse. But yeah, like putting anything over it, that's so bad, dude. Oh man, I can't even imagine how many people have done this with Android phones, and then also it's the Windows one is like the built-in Windows snipping screenshot tool. So, I mean, it's like the default for two major operating systems. So, it's going to be a very widespread thing. And the whole thing is like, yeah, if it's been sitting on Discord, people could just run into any Discord that they want and,
Look
mass
for fun
grab.
screenshots.
Yeah, mass grab all of the screenshots. Generally, the file name says screenshot in it, so they could probably just search by that, download everything, and then run it through some, software that they probably made pretty quick to undo it. And there you go. What goodies could a malicious figure have for? Yeah, I mean, like credit card information is like probably the worst one I can think of. Social security numbers, not good. I
Yeah.
definitely have like screenshot. Well, no, I don't know if I have screenshots of any cards, but like I have my driver's license on there on my phone.
But
So,
not a Android phone, and that's the key piece.
no, yes, I know. I'm just
Yeah,
saying
yeah.
if I have it,
Yeah, I am going to admit that I have a notes file in my phone that has important documents because that's more convenient than not having it.
yeah,
And like at the end of the day, we use technology to be convenient, right? And at this point, it can really bite, and that's a problem with these kinds of realizations. Is I don't think this was widely like used as an attack vector. However, now that Simon has made its problem very much visible to everyone,
yeah,
then it's something that anyone can now exploit because it's trivially easy to kind of figure it out, which is probably why he chose to like tell people, hey,
yeah,
watch out. It's better than to stay silent because someone is likely making good use of this.
yeah. And as far as I know, I could be wrong here, but they can't like retroactively do anything unless I guess Discord wants to like grab every file and
Reprocess it.
yeah, I don't think they'd do that. So, I mean, from now on, it's probably going to be fine. And I think I read somewhere, maybe it was a tweet that Google's like already issued an update for the affected phones and stuff. But
Yeah,
I
it's a
mean,
one character fix, right? It's not a big burden on
yeah,
them, but
but I mean, you've already got a ton of media that's already out there, so
yeah.
that's the big bummer.
Yeah, and I'm not saying iOS is like the best example here, because iOS for a very long time has had a very similar problem where people would go up to the markup thing, grab the black marker, and kind of scribble, but the black marker was set to 0.95% opacity.
Oh, I
So
didn't know
that
that.
means it never truly erased, no matter how many times you kind of went back and forth
Ooh.
on something. And that was later fixed to kind of warn people and say, hey, don't use this to block out details, or don't use a pixelated thing that actually just blurs. Like, hey, you can unblur text pretty easily because it turns out there are only 26 letters or like so to deal with, and it's very easy to figure out how each of those blur, and then to
Oh,
like
that's
pattern
fair.
match. So like, don't, if you ever want to hide information, just delete the information, and make sure that you are like truly using a copy. I
Yeah.
always wonder this, like with social media networks, like, hey, when you share a photo, are they going to share the GPS coordinates that are in the photo? Most of them will not, but some of them might, because they're not going to
Yeah.
think about like preventing that specific situation, right?
Yeah. I use Darkroom
Mm-hmm.
um, for like, especially freaking Slack. Every time I upload a photo, Dimitri's probably seen me do it. It's like a 95 megabyte raw photo, and Slack just doesn't want to process it. So I run it through Darkroom and make it into a JPEG and stuff. But along with that, it will remove the location metadata. So I'm just like, anytime that I'm actually going to share anything to like anyone other than like my family or something, I don't really care in our Slack, but Twitter or Mastodon or whatever, I'll definitely run it through like Darkroom or something that will remove that, because I'm like, yeah, you never know, or maybe it's not shown, but if they download the photo, then if it's not a copy, then they could maybe get that. I don't know how that works, but definitely better than to be safe than sorry.
It's okay. I already know where Spencer lives. It's the United States
Oh no!
on Earth,
For now,
the only habitable planet in our solar system.
you've really narrowed it down, my friend.
So, yeah, long story short, be careful when you share stuff on the internet, because turns out even stuff we thought we were doing everything right. It's like, oh yeah, I blacked it out. I cropped it. I did all the steps. Like,
Yeah.
sometimes that's not enough, unfortunately.
Yeah, the
So,
cropping especially is what gets me. Like you said, delete your data, and you're like, oh yeah, a crop is a deletion of my data. Generally, just not in
yeah.
these cases. So bummer.
I guess the better out like thing to learn from this is, don't use these APIs that truncate or to like write a file in place. Write a new file
Yeah,
and
definitely.
delete the old one and move the file once you're done. That is a much safer operation, especially if you perhaps grew up in a world where computers can suddenly turn off on you, because then you don't lose the old file, which is a plus. Yeah, that's less common with phones, but phones run out of battery, and that's kind of the same thing
Yeah,
that can happen. So that's like one of the reasons why, if you're recording a video with your phone and you run out of battery, that video survives, and that's because it is built up piecemeal rather
right.
than like replacing what's there. So do consider that when you're writing software. Like, what can happen in the disaster situation when I am not finished writing this entire file? Make sure that it is recoverable in some way, and think about that for your user's sake, right? Um,
Yeah,
and in this case, don't write in place. That's usually a bad idea.
lesson learned.
Yeah.
A lesson that Apple is learning is that maybe we don't need two volume buttons. Maybe we only
Or
need
maybe we
one.
don't need buttons at all.
Interesting, very interesting. CAD leaks report that the volume buttons are going to have sort of a single unified volume button, um, that is sort of based on haptics to know where you pushed. And my thought when I read this headline, I hadn't looked at the photo. I just thought, oh, if it's just like some sort of flat sensor, kind of like the I think it's the antenna on the other side, like the little 5G antenna that almost looks like a SIM slot. If it was
Mm-hmm.
flat like that, I'd be like, okay, cool. But if it's a single button, it feels like halfway there. And I was like, oh, I just rather have it go all the way and not even have it be a physical button. But that's just me.
I forgot the phones had that. I just assumed that was the battery charge, the Apple Pencil charger on iPads, but maybe that is the 5G thing on iPads as
I don't.
well.
It's definitely not an iPad or an Apple Pencil charger.
Well, yeah, I never look at the side of my phone. It's always in a case.
Yeah,
I completely forgot
fair.
that thing was there.
I think that's what it is, but I'm assuming it's some kind of
It
antenna.
would have to be on, yeah, because the 5G antennas are these big blocky things that
Hmm.
are like on the inside of the phone, or at least
Right.
they were. So I'm assuming that's
Yeah.
still the case.
Yeah. But also, instead of having a physical kind of switch for the mute button, you now actually press the button, which I was trying to think about this because I've definitely had times where like my phone is 100% of the time on mute.
Hmm.
But there are times when if it's in my pocket and I move around, it'll get unflipped to not be on silent. So I think what was it saying? Like you'd have to force press it to put it into silent mode. I don't know if that's gonna make my problem better or worse. I can't really tell. So, I mean, if I can press it when it's asleep and it still registers like I want to take it out of silent mode, it's probably not great. I don't know.
Yeah, I think silent mode is a very weird, like, antique feature of phones.
Hmm.
Um,
Yep.
like it's one of those things that, oh, a phone might be disruptive to others, so we want the ability to, in our pocket, make it silent, right?
Yeah.
To prevent it from bothering others. That said, I think the iPhone was kind of one of the only phones that had an actual ringer switch, right?
Yeah. I
Like
think so.
otherwise you would have to open up the phone and like twiddle with some settings. So like maybe it's time for it to kind of go, especially
Yeah.
now that most people either have a preference, it's either on or off. Like
Yeah. My
maybe
parents always have it on.
yeah, it's
That's
it's
fine.
not like a thing that you go and change every day, right?
Hmm.
That's what
Yeah.
they were thinking of when they put it there. It's like, oh, in
Just
the morning you would turn it on and the night you would turn it off kind of thing.
Yeah,
Um
just put it as like in the I always forget what it's called,
Control
the
center.
control center,
Hmm.
right by the focus modes, or make it a part of focus modes. I don't know. Actually, I don't know. Well, either way, yeah, it could definitely just be in UI, and that's it, and that would be fine.
Do you know what they could repurpose it as? A rotation lock. Kind of like what they did on the iPad, which was super super useful to have a
Oh,
little
yes,
tiny switch to
that would
like
be
say,
nice.
"Hey, I want it to rotate." I don't want it to rotate because do
That's
you know what
true.
something I do turn on constantly? The freaking rotation settings.
That's true.
And I
Yeah,
would use that
good
way
point.
more than a ringer.
Yeah,
But Apple doesn't believe in that because they removed that from iPads. The device that you would do that even more on, ostensibly. So yeah,
yeah.
that's a thing.
Good point, man. I mean, YouTube has it right where you can just like swipe up on the video and it rotates itself, but not every player does that. So that's like the only time that I use landscape mode is like to watch videos. So, yeah.
Yeah, on the iPad I use rotation lock constantly because
Oh yeah.
like I will be watching something and then I go on my side while I'm lying down and I don't want
Hmm.
the thing to rotate at that point in time. But
Yeah.
other times I'm standing up and going around and I rotate my iPad and it's like it's not rotating and then I go in and fiddle with the switch and same with the phone basically. It depends
Yeah.
like how you're using it. It's like, oh yeah, when I'm standing up I want it to rotate, but when I'm lying down I don't. And it's like a lot of steps to then turn that off going to the control center. So I guess keep it and give us the option. Maybe there already is the option and we don't know about it. Um,
That'd be a
yeah,
good accessibility setting to change that.
yeah. Watch
Yeah.
this whole time it has existed for years, and we're just like,
Yeah.
would be nice.
Ignorant. What if we
ignorance is
could? Oh,
ignorance is bliss, or in this case,
yeah.
ignorance is torture. Little by little,
Yeah.
death by a thousand
Yeah, for
cuts.
real. Well,
Um, but yeah, it's not the first time Apple has like replaced buttons with fake buttons.
yeah.
The iPhone 7, I think it was, replaced the home
Hmm.
button with a fake home button.
Yep.
The laptops famously don't have real buttons anymore for the trackpads.
Oh, yeah.
and it's very
It's so
weird
good.
when the computer is off and you can't click it anymore. It's like
Yeah.
it's like a piece of metal that like the palm rests. It just does not move unless the computer has power, and it's such a bizarre thing.
Good. Well, that's the thing though. It works so well that you
Yeah,
don't even realize like
you would never know.
that's the that was the best thing about when I upgraded to my 2015 MacBook Pro, because that was the first one that had the whatever Force Touch 3D, whatever they called it. So good, and you could click anywhere and it was just like, "Yes, I will register." You didn't have to click at the bottom.
But you're not clicking.
Yeah.
You're just like
I know,
pushing. But it
it's
feels like
just
a click.
it
It's
feels like
it's
it. It's
so
so
magical.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Apple's trackpads are just so good, dude. They're just excellent.
yeah. The only time I felt something like truly similar to that was when the Wii U, not the Wii U, the Nintendo Switch just came out. And do you remember 1-2 Switch? That like really
I
wacky
never
game
played it.
that it's actually pretty good.
Okay.
And the little game where you guess how many balls are in the box as you roll it around.
Okay.
Feels like there are little balls in the box that you were rolling around. Like it's
Oh.
legitimately uncanny how well that works.
Nice.
And it's using the exact same technology to give you an idea of like what's going on here. So like we can definitely trick our brains into thinking that we're pressing buttons, whether it's on the front or the sides.
Yeah.
It's a little sad we don't have 3D touch anymore on the screen because like it worked well. And long presses, it feels like a gimmick at that point, whereas before it felt like you were actually pressing on something. So and I'm glad the haptic engine is still in there though.
Yeah. That's why the iPhone 6S will like forever be one of my favorite iPhones, because it was just so good. That was the first one that had forced 3D touch, and it was just like absolutely magical. When did they get rid of that? After the 10? Was it like the 11 that they... Something like that? I can't remember.
Yeah. I think the 10S might have
Maybe.
been the last one.
Maybe.
Yeah. Sad times.
Yeah. Sad. I don't even know if it's like supported in iOS now, even if you did have that phone.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
They've likely disabled it, which is very
That
unfortunate.
sucks, dude. Speaking of iOS, we've got a new release of iOS 16.4. There's a bunch of new stuff here. I didn't know about it until I saw the notes, and so my phone just finished updating a few minutes ago, so I haven't played around with it. But Dimitri's got a gnarly long list of things, and I want to mention something I noticed as I was updating my phone in the update notes. I think the like priority of what they put first was kind of funny. It says, this update introduces, and as the number one thing, the first thing, 21 new emoji. Woo!
Only 21?
Like emoji above everything else. Okay.
That's the reason why people update. We know.
I guess.
Hey, I
thought that
updated
was
for
kinda
Melty
funny.
Faced. That one I was ready for.
Melty Face is so good, dude. I love it. And the Upside Down has been classic too. But we've had that for a while. So we've got new HomeKit Matter architecture change. Don't know anything about that.
So that actually shipped and broke a bunch of people's setups, so they like rolled it back. So it is back. I don't know if it's fixing anything. Maybe it will fix my HomeKit problems. I doubt it. But yeah, I'm gonna have fun giving that a try later this weekend probably, because I don't trust myself to do that midweek, especially after I just restarted everything. HomeKit.
Curse you.
Get off my lawn. I don't have a lawn. 5G standalone is now a thing, and if you were not keeping up, you need T-Mobile for this, and it will give you 3.3 gigabits per second downloads.
Holy crap.
Which is a whole lot of bits. I don't know why you would ever use this on a phone, but it is available on a phone only, which is hilarious. And on T-Mobile of all networks.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting, I mean, it's probably only with like millimeter wave and everything, but Um, I know, Dimitri, you were looking at like I forget what it's called, but something from Ubiquity that was like a 4G
Yeah, an
sort of
LT
backup thing.
backup network.
Like you could legitimately have a 5G version of that and like have no difference in in the speed of like your home internet. If anything, like might be better, and that's crazy to have
Depends on how many
over
cell phone
wireless.
users are in your area, I guess, which
That's
that
true.
part would suck. That said, your antenna that's connected to your home network is probably a whole lot stronger than the antenna of some rando's phone driving by. So
Yeah.
probably better, especially if it's mounted outside, consistent. Like you dial it in.
Hmm.
Um, and to be honest, when I got cable installed 3 4 years ago, now, that's what the tech told me is like, hey, it's only a matter of time before instead of coming out to your house to like run cable, we're just gonna install a 5G modem somewhere inconvenient,
Yeah.
and you're probably not gonna get a great signal, but we don't care because that work is done, and that's just the way it's gonna be, um,
That's man.
which is a little bit unfortunate.
It is.
But until
Yeah.
then, you get 3.3 gigahertz on your T-Mobile iPhone, which is fun.
Yeah. Like what? What are you realistically gonna fill your phone storage up with? Like
You need
downloading
to fill up
Netflix
your
movies?
64 gigabytes of storage,
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, those are dark days. Don't
and
remind
your
me of when that
five
was the max.
gigabytes of iCloud free tier storage.
Oh. Yeah. No.
There's a new
Uh.
beta switch that we
Yeah.
talked about. So if you want to sign up for betas now, you need to have a developer's account, or you can sign up for the public betas. At which point you don't have to install anything on your phone. It's just going to show up because you're signed in with that account. So that's cool. I
I.
think
Yeah.
they did
I
all the
think that's a way
things
better
right,
solution.
or at least I didn't hear about the things that they could have done wrong. So we will see in a week's time if that is inconveniencing anyone. Um,
Yeah. I
but
think it's better than, downloading a profile, restarting
mhm.
your phone and stuff. Like, it's not a big deal, and I don't really ever do it anymore, but it was kind of a hassle. So,
Do you know what I needed to install a profile for recently? This is
what?
not HomeKit because I had to install a profile to reset HomeKit. That's a separate thing. But I had to install a profile to turn off private logging on my Mac to find out why I couldn't do file sharing. Um,
Oh,
Yes. Do you remember we had that whole discussion last week?
yeah.
So it turns out that if you want to see what's being logged and in console, you can. It's just going to show you private for anything that could
Oh,
potentially be hazardous to share out. Um,
sure.
this is in general a good thing.
Yeah.
But the only way to disable that is to install a profile. Now, thankfully, you can write this profile yourself. It's not something like signed by Apple, and it tells you you're installing an unsigned profile, yada yada.
Yeah, yeah.
But that will disable the private thing, which I found very useful for debugging that because it would tell me exactly what's going wrong instead of private was
Right.
trying to access private. And I'm like, I don't know who private is and I don't know what they're trying to access. It didn't make
Yeah.
any sense. Um, so, yeah, I forgot what ended up being the solution to that fiasco. Don't trust Migration Assistant. It didn't help. But also,
Oh,
don't
no.
set custom icons. Ask me how I know, but don't ask me how I know because that's going to be fixed, and we're going to talk about that. I
Yeah.
didn't update that machine yet, but I will because I want custom icons back. Anyways, yeah, profiles, fun.
Yeah.
Glad we don't have to do that anymore for betas.
Yeah.
I fear for my
Um,
future phones actually, because when DubDub rolls around, it's gonna be very easy to download the beta now.
that's true. Yeah, that's a good point. I guess there was a little bit of a barrier to entry. And maybe that was a good thing in some ways. But you know what's maybe not good? I don't know. Is iOS 16.4 is now allowing health authorities to end the support for the exposure notifications feature of that one thing. Uh, so this is interesting. I think probably a net negative. But it's sort of like they're now letting uh, health authorities off the hook. So it says like they'll get let's see so when a authority decides to end the support for this feature, users will see a message informing them of that decision. So, it'll say, hey, your health authorities turned off exposure notifications. This iPhone's no longer logging nearby devices and stuff. So,
I guess that's better than the health authority just like not updating their Excel spreadsheet anymore.
sure.
That powered the whole thing, right? Do you
Yeah.
remember when that was a thing? There was like one Excel spreadsheet that was like managing COVID tracking throughout the world, and then
I
that
didn't know
that
that.
spreadsheet got too big at a certain point, and that just like
Oh,
caused chaos. That
I didn't
was
know that. That's
yeah.
crazy.
Turns out researchers use Excel as a
Ooh.
as a great
Let's
computation device.
let's introduce them to something better. Maybe Postgres or something? I don't know.
No, Excel's fine. My
Ah,
boss from a long time ago programmed a whole bunch of stuff in Excel. It ran very poorly. Turns out you can get image processing to happen much faster on a GPU. Who'da thunk?
that's crazy.
Yeah, crazy. But yeah, I guess it's better to know than to not to know. So I guess
Sure.
this is good. We kind of all seen the writing on the wall at this point that COVID is over. And you
Yeah.
should not at all worry at all. But
No.
if you need to, like, definitely still wear masks. I see plenty of people still wearing masks, and I
Yep.
think I personally always wear a mask whenever I go out. And I find it comforting that it's now more like it's more accepted than it certainly
It's
was before.
definitely for sure. I would always, even, I don't know, maybe it's just because of where I live, but like I would see, videos of people in like Japan or something walking down the street in a mask, and I thought that was just such an odd thing. I hadn't been exposed to the idea of like that being a normal thing outside of like a
It was only
hospital, right?
SARS that caused them to do that, right? Not
Yeah,
SARS 2.0 didn't do as good of a job, but SARS
yeah,
1.0 really scared the populace.
it was a
Um,
hit. Um, I'm wondering though, like I'm sure they'll keep this API around.
mhm.
Uh, so I'm assuming that if there's another pandemic or something, it would probably be easier to, get this going again. But it seems like for now, it's sort of like whatever.
I give us 4 years.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
Voice isolation is now available for cellular calls. I don't know why it wasn't available up until now,
Agreed. I
but
figured it was.
it's available. Maybe cellular calls were like so bad quality that it didn't need it. Like it would just you would just not hear anything anyways.
That's fair.
Um, so now you can allow people to hear you better if you need to. I thought like it did active noise cancellation already, but maybe this is
I thought,
just you can control it now. Hmm.
yeah, I don't know. That's weird. Yeah, I thought that we've been doing that since like the iPhone 6 or something with that rear microphone, but okay.
Do you know what we have been doing since the iPhone 6? Notifications
Oh,
and
yeah.
Notification Center. And adding to those notifications are web apps now. So you have yet another thing to say you're not interested in.
Yep.
Um, and yeah, that's a thing.
I, as if, and I've talked about this before, as if freaking web pages on mobile are not already cluttered enough with uh, GDPR and ads and stuff. You'll just have another thing. It's like literally you will not be able to see anything until you dismiss four things on a website. I hate the web, dude. It's the worst.
But yeah, I guess the folks at Google really thought it was great that every website kind of bombards you on every like browser that you use to like accept notifications because they're interested in sharing notifications with you. Um, and that's what we got now because that's a good thing.
Yep.
I kind of like the web better without it, but
Yep.
it's here to stay.
Yep.
Notifications. I
Yep.
have go away. 114,832 unread emails clogging up
Yes,
my
you did it.
notifications.
We did
So,
it. Reddit. That's awesome.
yeah, that's how often I will see your notifications websites who make use of this. I am sorry. I am not your
Yeah.
target marketing audience. Oh
Yeah.
well.
You know what is actually legitimately good though is a duplicates album in photos that finds shared duplicates. Holy crap, that's such a good thing to actually have. I've used like Gemini in the past and stuff, but like it's a pain to throw everything in there and just having every like photos. It's already connected to iCloud. Just being able to say like, "Hey, you've got duplicates." That's so good. I'm so excited.
So this is when I blow your mind. Apparently, this has always been in here for non-shared
What?
libraries. I didn't know about this either. But this adds the
Whoa.
ability for it to work in shared libraries.
Oh
So
my.
if you share your
Okay.
library with someone and now you have duplicates because you shared your library with someone,
Oh.
now that will catch those duplicates as well as the duplicates you already had.
Okay. Well, honestly, this is like making me feel like, are we even qualified to talk about this stuff? We don't even know what's going on in iOS.
Hey, I'm a professional in settings now. Or at
Ah,
least the four bullet items that I went through 14,000
ah,
times to get sharing
all
working.
right, all right,
Um, but yeah.
yeah,
And then it's a bunch of smaller fixes, right? And I
yep,
say smaller, but it's smaller for us, but not for others.
yeah,
Namely, the maps and the weather app, which have been super useful, are now accessible to more people via VoiceOver. There is an accessibility setting to automatically dim video when flashes of light or strobe effects are detected. And this
that's
is
cool.
great for people who want to rewatch that episode of Pokemon. That just that kind of made evident that epilepsy can be prevalent
Yeah,
in any age group.
anyone, yeah,
So jokes aside, I think this is an excellent thing to add.
yeah,
And people who have had strokes, like flashing lights do bother them. And if you have an option to decrease that, like that helps them and many other people. It
yeah.
turns out
Good
this is
idea.
also something that added to Apple TV. So you can go
Hmm.
ahead and turn this off on the TV itself. So unless the TV has a really good use to put HDR and crank it to the max, it doesn't need
Yeah,
to do that 10 times a second. And this will kind of manage that. I have not given it a try on the TV, so I will be curious to see how well it works. But any improvement is better than what's currently there. I'm sure a lot of people are rejoicing they'll finally be able to watch stuff that has been marked with warning flashes of light.
yeah,
Um, though,
yeah.
ask someone else to kind of preview it for you. I would not trust the availability of this feature to make everything safe, right?
Yep, definitely. Speaking of safety, crash detection got optimizations on the iPhone 14 and 14 Pro. That's good because I think my assumption is this was perhaps spurred on by people like skiing and like getting in crashes with skiing and their phone being like, "Did you get in a car crash?" And it's like, "No, dude."
There's a reason this is
So
coming out after the winter season, and that's because the winter
yeah,
season provided a lot of data.
good data. Yeah, yeah. So that's good. I remember them saying like they tested on like something like 1,000,000 hours of driving or something, but
No one
that
tested
didn't take
skiing.
into account skiing. So that's
The
pretty good.
moguls
Got to
will
get
do
the
it.
the dang edge cases, man. They get even an Apple. So
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah.
Uh, and then if you have children, Ask to Buy will not fail as much as it did. And if you have a Matter compatible thermostat, that will not become unresponsive anymore. So, um,
Ooh, yeah.
all around, good updates. Glad to have iOS 16.4 available.
Yes.
And glad to have a new version of Xcode available, which we'll probably talk about next time. I don't know if it became available. I just saw like there's
Oh, I
an
don't know.
RC2 for it.
That
So
was there.
maybe it's not available yet. Um, but something that is available is macOS Ventura 13.3.
Yeah.
And this fixes the most important thing. And the only reason I know that it fixes the most important thing is because there's a wonderful website called the Eclectic Light Company
Yeah.
that goes into exquisite detail into every change that happens with every macOS update.
Yeah.
Namely, they will go and diff the kex. So that way you know like what actually changed, what libraries got updated, what like
Yep.
we don't know what about them changed, but we know some change happened. And notably, beta testers were pleased to report that this update fixes the bug where you cannot connect to SMB shares with custom icons, which is something that I wasted a crap load of hours on top of, because long story short, listen to last week's episode, but I updated a Mac Mini to another Mac Mini, and in the process ended up with a new version of macOS Ventura, and in the process was unable to share anything, and I ripped my hair out as I learned how shares are stored. It's not anything sensible. It's in a directory, whatever it's called. The thing that users are like, the internal database that manages like everything on your computer. That's where file sharing is stored. Why is it shared in there? I don't know. Anytime you share something in file sharing, there's 3 ways to do it, and they do 3 different things to directory something or whatever it's called. I know that because if you add it through the system preferences, it creates a new group that is hidden from all UIs. That's called sharing group number N. Where N is however many times you did this. So you can end up with 15,000 of these if you do things over and over again. If you go to Finder and you click the little share this checkbox, that one does it a slightly different way. And if you go to sharing, which is a command line command to do this same thing, it will not create that thing. And I'm very happy because I deleted all those as I tore my hair out trying to figure this out. And I finally realized it's because of custom icons. So that is finally fixed. Thank you, Apple. I'm glad I learned all that, but I would have loved to learn it under different circumstances. Yes. That is where I'll leave it.
That's fair. We get a new app for displaying, calibrating Pro displays using like actual calibration tools. I'm sure I've never used one, but I'm sure those calibration tools had their own apps that went along with
for
them,
Windows. So that made it really easy to calibrate stuff.
I see the problem now. Gotcha. Yep, that would do it.
So Apple finally stepped up and did it.
You probably know more about this. I'm sure there's some standard.
No.
Sweet. Awesome.
Yep.
Love it.
Apple has a standard. Windows has a standard. Everything is kind of a LUT behind the scenes. And color is perceptual. That's all I can say. It's cool. It's really complicated. I'm glad we finally have something. I'm glad I'm no longer doing that kind of development because it was its own special kind of hell. Notice the lack of this TV that I no longer have to deal with. That is something that I'm sure a lot of people in the film industry are welcoming with open arms. And I will kind of keep an eye out for how well this does. And I guess I can launch it on the Pro Display XDR. So see what the software looks like. Apparently you need a Pro Display to kind of pair with it. Sure. I do not have a spectrometer. Those cost a lot of money. There is a different kind of technology, like the little puck that you put. That is not a spectrometer. That is a colorimeter. I think it's called. Basically, it just has a red, a blue, and a green pixel, and it measures the intensity. A spectrometer does the much cooler thing, and it actually has a prism inside of it, and it will graph the wavelengths of light that it receives. You can tell what kind of red are you receiving, and you can calibrate it accordingly. So,
gotcha.
Very different kind of tool, very different way of calibrating them. This piece of software seems like it will be able to read values and construct a calibration LUT, so that way you can properly display stuff on your screen without like the shadows disappearing. I'm sure everyone has seen that on like older laptop screens. All of a sudden none of the windows have shadows anymore, and all the whites and grays are kind of muddied, and that's because the calibration over time falls apart because the display changes over time with heat and with temperature and stuff like that. So yeah, very welcome. And then we have the usual set of changes that are more or less duplicated from iOS, namely new emoji. There's a remove background option in Freeform. If you have used Freeform, I have yet to use it past the one occasion when it came out. It seems really cool though, and I would like to use it one day. So I will check back when I eventually do use it and probably have a lot of angst because that seems like the thing that I like to build up in my 30s. Um, the Photos Duplicate album thing exists. There's transliteration support for, I am very sorry, Gujarati, Punjabi, and Urdu keyboards. There are new keyboard layouts for, and I am sorry once again, Choctaw, Chickasaw, Akan, Hausa, and Yoruba language layouts. There's an accessibility setting to dim the video once again. Voiceover for maps in the weather app, because weather is now a Catalyst app that is shared, which is kind of cool.
Cool.
There was an issue with trackpad gestures. I never ran into that one. The ask to buy thing is fixed. And then there was also an issue where voiceover was unresponsive after using the Finder, which seems like a very common thing that you might do on a computer. And that is also fixed. So thank you, Apple, for maybe fixing the one thing that I had a lot of problems with and not actually listing it out. So I don't know if the icon thing actually got fixed. So I'm about to add custom icons like an idiot after updating and maybe break everything again. I don't know. We will see.
We'll see.
I am a reproducible idiot that may or may not have dementia coming. So that
Time machine that.
Yeah. that's something that I will do for science.
Yay, science. All right. watchOS 9.4. We've got wake up alarms no longer are silenced with the cover to mute gesture to avoid accidental cancellations during sleep. Probably a good one.
I actually use that a lot, namely to sleep more. So this is probably great to get me to wake up, because I would be like, no, shut up. I want to sleep more.
Fair.
So yeah, I guess thank you, Apple, for helping me actually wake up in the morning. But I thought that was a neat like solution.
Yeah, makes sense.
If you didn't know, you can ask Siri to turn off other people's alarms, and I don't think this is widely known, but if you are in a room with someone else's alarm is going off and they are dead asleep, you can ask Siri to turn off nearby alarms. And like the HomePod will go ahead and turn off the alarm on someone else's iPhone, which is
that's cool.
Like cherry on top of the cake, chef's kiss. Thank you, Apple, for including that. I don't know why they don't like talk about it more, but here I am talking about it because people need to know this stuff.
That's really cool. I like that. We've also got cycle tracking with retrospective ovulation estimates, and cycle deviation alerts are now supported in Moldova and Ukraine. Cool. And AFib history now available in Colombia, Malaysia, Moldova, Thailand, and Ukraine. So more features, more places. That's always good.
Yeah, and it's basically working with those countries to accredit their solution and make sure that or assure those countries that Apple is not just like coming out with like snake oil, which is what they want to respectively protect their citizens from, because who knows what the US is one day going to decide is legitimate and that they don't necessarily want to just follow through with, right?
Yep, for sure. The only update that we have for tvOS 16.4 is the dim flashing lights feature that we've talked about for iOS and macOS. So that's, I mean, for tvOS, that's huge because big TV, big flashing lights.
Yep. And that leaves us with iOS 17, right? That's the next big release. Usually we don't have another point release with significant features after the 0.4 version or the 0.3 for macOS. And apparently iOS 17 is intended to be a bug fix release. I hope that means it's a bug fix release for macOS as well. I don't know if that is guaranteed to be the case, or we might just get no release of mention, like the number updated but nothing actually got changed, which is always a sad prospect to think about for macOS. But I'm hoping they improve things, because oh boy, Ventura has been special in my heart. For all sorts of reasons. Like, this has definitely been one of the macOS releases I have had to restart the most with.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. I have not, but Big Sur was particularly bad for me for some reason.
Yeah, I
Like,
feel like recently someone has had an issue with some release,
yeah,
and they have not been uh, like universally stable. And yeah, restarting is not the end of the world. It's annoying when you have to restart several services manually. I'm looking at you, Docker, to get everything like up and going
yeah.
again.
Docker sucks, dude.
Web
I
development,
mean, it's
it's
cool.
wonderful.
Yeah,
So yeah, a little less of that would be very welcome.
hmm
But uh, yeah, mostly I'm looking for a more stable macOS, I would say, rather than a
yeah,
more stable iOS. iOS has been fine. Maybe I don't use it professionally enough, and I use
sure.
the hell out of macOS, and that's why I find all these issues. I don't know. But yeah, I would like to be able to trust my devices.
Yeah, I'm always in favor of something like this. And again, I know that I've talked about this on the show before, and I always forget which version it is. But like, it's like iOS 12 or something that was like a bug fix release of iOS, and it was great. It was awesome. I really enjoyed that. So having something like, yeah, like for like you said, iOS has been fine for me. I don't, you know, it's pretty. I use Slack and YouTube, and that's pretty much it. But definitely for macOS, if it has its turn and doesn't move so fast, and like changing the UI all the time and changing freaking system preferences. That's my biggest gripe right now with Ventura. I hate system settings, dude. It sucks.
It's a hot pile
Uh,
of garbage.
I don't know why they had to change what it's been since like macOS 10 dot whatever, like very early macOS dot 10, or maybe it's always been there. I don't know. Longer than I've been using macOS. Yeah,
It was such a good app. I really like
it
system
was so
preferences. I
good.
memorized where every preference was. I was able to help
Exactly.
anyone. Now I have no clue what's going on
I know,
anywhere.
dude.
But
It didn't have to go iOS style. It really didn't, man.
now there's search that doesn't work as well. So thank you. That said, you may soon be able to converse with the dead system preferences, and I'm joking with that, but John Mayer, who I actually know, so this is not like a random person on Twitter, was able to put something very interesting together using ChatGPT. No, sorry, GPT-4 and Whisper. So to give you some background, Whisper is a neural network that's able to mimic speech from other people. Like you can train it on someone
Sound bites.
else's sound bites, and it will be able to speak like them. GPT-4 is able to do the same, but for conversation. It's not made
Right.
for that, but it basically mimics humans talking by kind of
It's a
having
storyteller.
having read every like piece of human
Yeah.
literature that's on the internet. It's able to kind of play the part as a human reasonably well without actually having any knowledge, and that's quite surprising. I didn't think we would get that before we would get like self-actualizing like intelligences, but we have it.
Yeah.
And I think it's like this is a great time to stop, honestly. Like I don't think we need to go further.
Yeah.
Like we got what we needed out of AI. We don't need to have a more intelligent AI. Let's skip Skynet, please.
Yeah.
Like everyone thought this kind of AI would be impossible unless we also had
Oh,
Skynet,
yeah.
but like we have this and it's not Skynet. Let's stick to it. um so yeah, what did John Mayer do? So he went ahead and trained Whisper on Steve Jobs, and then he had ChatGPT play the role of Steve Jobs, and he had Whisper read what ChatGPT, not
Right.
ChatGPT, sorry, I keep saying that, it's GPT-4,
GPT-4.
what GPT-4 was responding with. So you could essentially talk with Steve Jobs and actually get Steve Jobs talking back to you. Um, and the reason he did this is because he lost his dad like at a very young age, or much too early. Not necessarily a young age, I misspoke, but much too early. And he wants to be able to eventually like talk with him once again. And he
Yeah.
knows it's not going to be the same thing and all that. But just hearing the voice of someone you cherish talking about the things that you would talk about with them, like oftentimes that's enough when you need
Yeah.
some connection there. And like from that point of view, it's very interesting that something like this has become available, right? Can this be abused? Yes. Will it be abused? Most
Definitely.
definitely. But for the legitimate use cases, I think this is something that can be wonderful for people. So definitely looking forward to see how this is not like turned into a money making thing and instead turned into a thing that can help people. Because it most definitely can help a lot of people.
Yeah. You should definitely check out this tweet that we'll link. It is like incredible how, I mean, it's GPT-4, right? So it's not just trained on things from 2020 back, but you can, I think, search the web maybe.
No, you
Um,
can tell it to like, how can I find out more information by searching Google, and it will give you search queries that you can then put in Google and do stuff with. But
okay.
that is not what it's capable of currently doing.
Okay. In this case, like he asks, it's in a sort of a text. It almost looks like Facebook Messenger. Maybe it is. I don't know. But it says, "Tell me about the biggest global event that occurred in 2020." Thinks for a couple seconds and gives a sound, an audio thing that you can play in the message. The voice is shockingly believable. Like you've probably heard, you the viewer, not Dimitri, have probably heard, AI generated voice, and you can kind of tell that like it's a little tinny and it doesn't quite sound right. It was pretty convincing. This is definitely the best example of AI generated voice that I've personally heard. So it, the technology was very impressive to combine these two things and turn it into functionally a, independently sort of speaking thing, being, I don't know what to call it, but it's very impressive.
Yeah, it's not. Once again, GPT-4 is not actually intelligent. It is not
Yeah,
doing anything uh, unique. It is pantomiming every human that has ever
right.
written up to until now. And that's an important distinction. Much like Dolly is using other people's art, GPT uses what other people have said.
Right.
So, yes, it might seem like it is coming up with new thoughts, but it is not coming up with new thoughts in the same way that humans are capable of doing.
Sure.
So, like, it is very reasonably useful for today, but I can see, like, if we push this technology further, it's going to be used as a way of replacing humans, and I don't think that's going to be useful, because the only people who are going to get away with replacing humans are big corporations that no longer want to hire people.
Yeah.
That's what's going to happen. And once you are a giant corporation with three people at the top that can just
Make all the
farm
money.
money out of
Yeah.
like real humans, then I think we've missed the point of building a society.
Yeah.
That's kind of what happens with capitalism. I'm not going to lie. If you look at Amazon, you have a very few amount of people at the top who have essentially farmed money from not so like there's a nuance here. They didn't farm money from the people who purchased Amazon goods. They farmed money from the people they did not pay to deliver those Amazon goods.
Yes.
That is going to be something that is just going to become more widespread as robots and now close enough AIs are going to be more and more like available. So that's, I guess, the warning to anyone who is thinking about this stuff. Like, make use of it. It's going to be useful. Learn to adapt to a world where this is going to be available. I once thought that, hey, programming is a unique and hard enough thing that, like,
Yeah.
no one is going to be able to really replace me, but I wasn't thinking hard enough in terms of like what could be used to replace me. Yeah, sure, it might not be other more inexperienced humans, but it most definitely can be a AI that's been trained on every piece of code that's
Line
ever
of
come
code.
out,
Yep.
and that could most definitely do the kind of job that I do on a daily basis. And it could probably do just as bad as a job, right? Like, no one's going to notice, though, because there's going to be no more humans involved in the process. It's going to be code reviewing itself. So
that's weird.
Yeah. Thank you, GitHub, for putting that out into the world. But yeah, this is the world we are kind of putting ourselves into. Or not that we're putting ourselves into, but that we now have to contend with. Is probably a better way of putting it. Yeah, I guess help us become independent as I segue into our sponsor. But no, joking aside, like, I really don't know how to contend with this going forward, because guess what? Someone has already done the podcast thing done by AI between Joe Rogan and Steve Jobs. And yeah, it was a little wackadoodle, but it's not going to be wackadoodle in 2 years' time once things are a little better. And maybe that will be more interesting than listening to us. So who knows? This week's episode of Code Completion is brought to you by Weekly Swift Exercises. Learning Swift, there's no substitute for practicing. There's dozens, literally dozens of people Fernando's mentored through different programs, and he's seen it time and time again. After you learn the basics of programming, you slow down because learning through experience is demanding and painful. Increasing your confidence is key, and there's an easy way to do it: practice. Fernando's weekly exercises help you practice concepts like closures and protocols while implementing actual features like dark mode. It's free to join. Besides exercises, Fernando sends 1 or 2 articles about learning Swift. Some are technical in nature, but most of them will help you in your career by teaching you things like best practices, working as a team, and getting ready for your first job. Thanks again to Fernando and Weekly Swift Exercises for sponsoring Code Completion. Go to twitter.com/swiftexercises today to learn more. So Spencer, I've got a Code Completion tip for you. And this one was actually inspired by Fernando because he asked a question on our internal little Slack thingamajig. Whenever you implement, so this is kind of a Swift specific problem, but whenever you implement delegates and other things on your view controller, you have to be very careful that something else higher up in the class hierarchy didn't also implement that delegate. This is namely troublesome whenever you use gesture delegates, because gesture delegates are widespread throughout the system, and therefore there's a high chance that a view controller is privately implementing a gesture delegate, like one of the methods, and in Swift you have no way of calling super in that scenario, because Swift cannot guarantee that super exists, and therefore you can't bypass that like you could in Objective-C if there was that implementation happening, and you happen to know that was happening because you looked at private APIs. So one great way around this is to implement a class just for the delegate. So this is a class myDelegate of type UI gesture recognizer delegate. And in there, you can just declare the one method or 2 methods that you're interested in. You never have to worry about calling super because your class has a single super class NSObject. And NSObject does not conform to UI gesture recognizer delegate. I can guarantee you that. Right. So this is a great technique because not only can you have your delegate implementation in there, you can also have a pointer or a reference to your actual gesture recognizer. You can have that bundled in there, and that means that wherever you're using this, you can use it as a component that you just kind of keep it around. Right. You can ask it to kind of set itself up, attach itself to a view, and from that point forward, you are keeping a reference to your delegate, which you need to keep alive anyways. You choose when you don't want to keep that alive, and in the DNIT, you can have it like remove the gesture recognizer and clean up in the process. So this is a great technique for all sorts of delegates. The big ones like table view data source and UI table view delegate, you probably don't need to worry too much about because those are well kind of documented. But for things like the gesture recognizers, you really don't know which view controllers are implementing those, and there have been cases where I was bit because I forget which superclass I was like subclassing, but that one did go ahead and implement it, and it was not possible to kind of funnel through and say like, hey, this gesture that I know you view controller, you went ahead and set yourself as a delegate for, you can no longer handle because I now stuck my face in there. So this kind of prevents that situation, and I would highly recommend it, mostly because it keeps the code nice and clean as well, right? It's not just an extension at that point, it's its own unique little class.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I think that's like a big thing that I've kind of learned over time is like, and especially at my job now, is like, don't be afraid of making new files. Like, for example, we will have, I don't know, some file that like has a bunch of protocol conformances, and we've ended up just making extensions in brand new files for each of those like large protocol conformances, and it makes it so that you're not scrolling through like literally 3,000 lines of code in a single file. It's like a little bit more organized, and you're taking a step further by making a completely different class and linking it that way. But I mean, organizationally that's good, and then also just the like you said, the added benefit of them not having to kind of you're not fighting with your super class as far as like who owns what gesture. So that's nice.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot easier to not worry too much about how big files are, how many files you have. Like, we have, for all intents and purposes, unlimited resources for text. That's not true for video, but for text at least, you really have...
Or tabs.
Unlimited resources. Tabs, I cannot make that promise. My computers, with their copious amounts of RAM, do not have unlimited resources for tabs. You take that back, sir.
I speak only the truth, sir.
This is the reason I need to restart often. It's all the tabs. But yeah, like, take advantage of the fact that you can organize things semantically rather than for performance sake. Only Facebook needs to worry about Xcode not being able to compile their app because they made it too big. For everyone else, there isn't MasterCard, but there is just like organize your files, keep it sane. Shift Commando to the rescue.
And one that I learned about, I don't know, maybe a few months ago, was Shift Command J. Shows you where the file is in the file, like in the file organizer. So good, because I mean, we have things out in folders, but if you just like are command clicking through things and trying to jump to definition, I don't think it actually shows that and kind of follows that in the file organizer. So you're like, where is this file? Shift Command J actually highlights it and opens all the folders and stuff. So nice. So that's been a nice one that I've used recently.
Yeah, I got super used to that in Nova, which is Panic's ID for web development. Whenever you click on a file, whenever you Shift Command O and you get to something, it will automatically highlight the freaking file in the file navigator.
Nice.
Which, I don't know why Xcode doesn't do automatically. You might lose your place. I don't know. Things are already so chaotic. Just highlight it. It would make life simpler. That and the stupid tab with the italics, like, it's never useful.
The new form of tabs in Xcode, I turned those off. I hate them so much. I just turned on normal tabs.
I now know that's a VS Code thing, that they have infected the world's populace with this monstrosity. But that I don't get it. Like, I just end up with so many as I open stuff up. And it's like, the
back button works just fine. Just let me hit the back button when I want to.
I don't get it. I don't think VS Code has a back button. That's the thing. But I don't use VS Code because that drove me nuts. Do you know why? Because when I scrolled, it made me nauseous. And I didn't think I could get nauseous by scrolling code. But when the scroll animation is ever so slightly off from what you're used to system-wide, that will do awesome, it. Dude. That's why I very happily just gave Panic lots of money to... it's not even lots of money. It's very affordable. Just go support Panic. Yes.
Panic is the best, dude.
Yes, Nova panics and will crash. mostly because of Node. But it happens, and I've sent them lots of loving poetry via the crash reporter. Oh, this time it was me saving, because there was one night where it crashed maybe like 24 times, so I just kept building on whatever I was saying previously. Kind of like I don't remember what that movie is where they have the cards in front of the house and it's like snowing outside and they're like, I still loved you, but yada yada.
Oh yeah.
So very much in the spirit of that, I left a lot of love notes to the Panic developers, or I'd like to think they were nice. I don't remember at the time because it crashed 24 times that night. But support Panic.
Panic's great.
Let them continue making Nova be a great app because it is way better than VS Code, and VS Code is hot garbage. And I say that with no remorse.
Yeah, I'm just glad Xcode is like, it's good. I like it. I don't, Xcode will eventually, occasionally crash. And I think we talked about it probably in earlier episodes, like pretty early episodes. And there were some weird issues with like crashing when you made a tab or something. I don't know, but like they fix it and it's good. And
I still feel bad to this day when like I told an Xcode developer at WWDC, I'm like, I don't like Xcode, it keeps crashing. When I was like 18 or 19, I just said that to their face. I had no remorse at all. But
you're brutal, dude.
I guess in my 30s, I've come full cycle, and in a completely different way.
Now you know what's out there, and you're like, okay, yeah, Xcode, pretty good.
Yeah. Oh, VS Code, complete trash. Don't use VS Code, use Nova. I wish them all the best that they can fix the crashes that I have encountered, but I will continue giving them good bug reports because actually the best I can give, honestly, I don't know why I crashed. I typed a letter, but I remembered which letter I typed every time because I was getting good at it. So hopefully it was useful. That's all I got to say. As always, I want to personally thank everyone for listening in this week. Please be sure to follow us on mastodon.social at codecompletion to know when new episodes go live, and feel free to toot at us if there's ever a topic you'd like for us to dig into. Most importantly, as a small podcast, please be sure to share this with your friends and family who are also interested in any part of the process of app development. It's your support that enables us to continue doing this, and we hope to grow a healthy community around everything we discuss. Once again, I want to give my thanks to Spencer, who is at Spencer C. Curtis. That's SpencerCurtis for joining me this week. My name once again is Dimitri. You can find me at Dimitri Buñol. That's DimitriBouniol. And we'll see you all next week.
Bye.
How excited are we for 10 minutes of Tears
of the Kingdom? It'll be good. I hope. I don't know. I'm sure... I don't know anything about this. Is it just going to be gameplay, or is it just talking about the game? Or
I think they just said gameplay.
Cool.
I don't know if it means that like Eiji Aonuma is just going to go and like make a car for 10 minutes, and we're just going to get like no visibility into the actual game.
It's like all top down, just pointing at the ground. You don't see any actual like landscape or anything.
Or let's explore this cave, and then he's like, "Oh, I found some wonderful rocks. Let's go see." And it's like we get nothing done in these 10 minutes. And everyone's like, "Oh yeah, rocks!"
Just climbing around the cave. Yeah,
he can climb the ceiling and the stalactites.
Yeah, there you go. But what time is it at?
7 a.m. Pacific. So before I wake up, which is perfect.
I will not be awake. Yeah, I'll just watch the replay.
Yeah.
What time is that in Japan?
I don't know. 16 hours, I think. Like 4 or 5 p.m.
Oh, okay. I thought it was no.
No, I went in the other
11
direction.
p.m.
Interesting.
11 p.m. What the crap? That's such a weird time.
Well, it's already pre-recorded. I don't think they're gonna actually do it live.
But like. Well, I guess it's like maybe Eastern time is a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, 10 a.m. Eastern time is a sane time to do it.
Yeah.
That's where their Nintendo store is, right? It's in New York. So.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. Oh. Did they open the Nintendo World?
Yes.
Right? And did they just do it in Hollywood, or did they do it in Universal Florida as well.
I don't know.
I don't know. I have yet to visit it, despite.
Oh, dude, I thought it was in Florida. It's in Universal Studios in Hollywood. You're like right there, dude.
Guess how far that is away from my parents? A 2-minute drive. We can walk.
Oh,
I used to walk to Universal City Walk from my parents' house.
Oh my gosh.
It's like a 20-minute walk, which was like super nice until the curfew police came, which was always fun. We hid in the candy store. Yeah,
they never look in a candy store for kids.
But yeah, that's
Dang, you should
here.
go, man.
I should. If
or
it
I
weren't
should
COVID
visit
times.
You, and we should go.
You should visit me, and we should go during non-COVID
Let's
times.
go.
Hopefully, it'll still be there.
Yeah.
I guess they replaced Harry Potter. I don't know what they like. Universal Studios is very small.
Point.
There's not like room, so they have to replace something anytime they bring something in. So I don't know what they got rid of. But yeah, it's a thing.
Sweet, cool. Well, we'll go sometime, and we'll have a live, or not a live, but a completely in person episode of Code Completion at Dimitri's house or something.
We're gonna totally not know what to do with show notes and recording. It's gonna be chaos.
It'll be total chaos, but you'll be here for it, I guess. Maybe.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It'll be wonderful.
See. Cool.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.